Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am super excited to guide you through today's source material. If you've ever spent time trying to build a really consistent meditation practice, you absolutely know the feeling of just hitting a wall. But what if that wall isn't just a lack of focus? What if it's something deeply embedded in your environment? Today, we are digging into a highly intriguing diagnostic guide translated from a spiritual practitioner. It offers a profoundly different, culturally rich perspective on exactly why your spiritual progress might be stalling out.
So I want you to honestly ask yourself this. Ever feel like there's literally an invisible force blocking your meditation? Because, let's face it, we've all been there. You're doing the breathing exercises, you're sitting perfectly quietly, but instead of this profound peace, you just feel agitated, stagnant, or super frustrated. Now, in Western mindfulness, we're quick to blame our busy schedules, right? Or maybe our terrible smartphone habits. But our source text today looks at this very modern frustration through a traditional, paranormal lens. It actually suggests that the resistance you're feeling might be completely external.
Here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with when meditation stops working, move into spotting spiritual negativity, look at the physical symptoms of dark energy, cleansing your home environment, the power of original languages, and wrap up with finding a spiritual cure. Let's jump right in.
First up, when meditation stops working.
Okay, so our source material kicks things off by addressing practitioners who are honestly doing everything right. They're chanting, they're meditating, they are putting in the hours, but their progress has totally flatlined. The text argues that when you're putting in that genuine effort but getting absolutely zero spiritual results, you are probably hitting an invisible barrier. And the source uses a very specific umbrella term for this: negativity. Now, in normal, everyday conversation, negativity might just mean, a bad attitude or a pessimistic coworker. But in the context of this spiritual diagnostic guide, negativity is an active, suppressing force that literally hinders your spiritual progress. It's not just a bad mood, it is treated as a very tangible roadblock. Moving on to part 2, spotting spiritual negativity. If negativity is the true culprit here, how do you actually know it's present? Well, the source emphasizes that this negativity doesn't just float around in the abstract, it actually attaches. It might attach directly to you, it could be affecting a family member, or it might even be anchored right into the physical space of your home. To really grasp this, we have to define our terms exactly as the source does. In this specific spiritual framework, negativity is a literal reference to paranormal entities. Yeah, we're talking about ghosts, dark spirits, and demonic forces that create active blockages in your life. The text suggests that these entities are fundamentally repelled by spiritual light. So when you sit down to meditate and generate that light, they actively push back to shut you down. It is a wildly fascinating anthropological look at how spiritual struggles get personified across different cultures.
All right, so how do you diagnose this? The source shares a traditional self-check ritual to actually physically detect if these dark entities are hanging around in your energy field. Step 1. You hold a very specific combination of items in your hand: camphor, cardamom, and cloves. These are deeply traditional aromatic items used in Eastern rituals. Step 2. You begin to chant your personal mantra. And then step 3. You pay really close attention to your body. According to the practitioner, if there's a dark entity present, you're actually going to start feeling physical vibrations manifesting right there in your hands or your body.
Which brings us to our third section, physical symptoms of dark energy.
What's truly interesting here is just how tangible these symptoms are supposed to be. This diagnostic guide gets incredibly specific about the literal, physical toll this negativity takes on your body during deep meditation. The source claims that if you sit down to meditate and suddenly, out of nowhere, experience intense, unexplained pain in your back, your shoulders, or your head, that is a massive red flag. Other symptoms they list include spontaneous crying, where you're just weeping with literally no emotional trigger, involuntary body twitching, excessive yawning, unexplained burning sensations, and in the most severe cases, actually seeing ghosts or entities in your mind's eye while your eyes are closed. The text frames these not as medical issues, but as the actual physical friction of dark energy fighting your meditation. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this stern warning from the text. Positive habits simply won't work until the underlying negativity is completely cleared. You can download a fancy new meditation app, you can force yourself to wake up at 5 a.m., you can try with all your might to focus, but if you have an active paranormal blockage, none of it is going to take root. Think of it like trying to plant a beautiful, thriving garden in completely toxic soil. You literally have to clear out the toxins first.
That leads us nicely into section 4, cleansing your home environment.
If we've officially diagnosed the problem as spiritual negativity, how do we actually fix that toxic soil? Well, the source shifts its focus from the internal body to the external physical space, providing some very traditional remedies to secure your home. The text outlines a brilliant cross-cultural approach to home cleansing across three main categories. First up, aromatic remedies. This involves putting traditional perfumes, known as attar, directly on your curtains and furniture, because dark energy supposedly avoids fragrant spaces. Second, ritualistic remedies. This means using a Hindu fire ritual called a havan, or burning camphor to actively repel the negativity. And finally, auditory remedies. Playing spiritual audio, like recitations of holy texts, to totally cleanse the atmosphere of the room. It's basically a multi-sensory approach to spiritual home defense.
I have to say, I absolutely love this quote from the source. Where there is fragrance, negativity does not come easily. The speaker actually pauses to share a personal anecdote here, explaining that their own home is constantly filled with the scent of aromatic oils applied right to the curtains, the sofas, and even their clothes. By maintaining this consistently beautiful, fragrant environment, they believe they're creating a space that is fundamentally inhospitable to dark energy. It's a surprisingly practical and honestly really pleasant spiritual defense mechanism.
Moving right along to Section 5, the power of original languages.
Okay, here we encounter what I think is one of the most intellectually fascinating claims in the entire source text. It's all about the use of spiritual audio and mantras. The text argues that the actual language you use drastically alters your repelling power. The speaker uses this really cool point system analogy to explain it. They say that if you recite a holy verse in a translated language, like English, sure, it still has meaning, but it might only yield, let's say, 1 point of spiritual energy. But if you recite that exact same prayer in its original ancient language, like Arabic or Sanskrit, boom, it yields 10 points of energy. The core belief here is that the specific phonetic vibrations of those ancient words hold the actual tangible power to repel spirits. When you translate it, you literally lose the frequency.
But wait. There is a catch. The source gives a very clear warning about our love for modern convenience. Don't just passively play the audio. You can't just throw a YouTube video of a Sanskrit chant or a recitation of the Quran Surah Al-Baqarah onto a Bluetooth speaker, wander off to the kitchen to make a sandwich, and expect your house to be magically cleansed. No way. The practitioner insists that active, highly focused pronunciation by you, the actual human being in the room, is required to build up that protective energy barrier. You have to be an active participant in your own spiritual defense.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 6, Finding a Spiritual Cure. So, what happens if you've done the whole shebang? You've scented your curtains, you've burned the camphor, you're actively chanting in the original ancient language, and that invisible wall is still firmly in place. Well, the source offers a healthy dose of realism for this spiritual framework. They point out that home rituals are great. They definitely reduce the negativity, but they rarely completely remove deeply entrenched dark energy. If someone has performed targeted black magic against your home, a concept they refer to as kriya, you just can't handle it alone. It requires expert intervention. For those really severe cases, the source recommends visiting specialized spiritual healers or specific centers over in India, like Shani Dham in Delhi, where intense, incredibly focused mantra therapy is used to permanently break the blockage.
And that brings us to the very end of today's explainer. It is an incredibly detailed and honestly a totally different way of looking at our everyday mindfulness struggles. So, I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative thought to ponder. The next time you sit down to meditate and find yourself hitting a wall, or you experience sudden shoulder pain, or just feel deeply, inexplicably restless, is your spiritual roadblock just a simple lack of focus? Or, if we look through the lens of this ancient framework, is it actually something else entirely in the room with you? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.